Milo Fantasy Football League. This is the week 3 recap. Unfortunately, I missed last week. I was out sick. Still kind of sick, so we're just back at it for week 3. Today's drink, just because I'm feeling sick. I don't know, I just made this up. It's basically fresh squeezed lime juice, some ginger syrup, and Irish whiskey, and a couple slices of lime wheels. And it's hot. It's served hot. It does taste pretty good as something to drink when you're not feeling so hot. So it's actually pretty good. So that's the drink. Maybe just a quick recap of week 2 since we missed it last week. Me and Milo beats mediocre minions by 6 points, 119.78 to 113.64. Prince Llama 122.06 over Richie 115.28. Another kind of close game. This game was also within a double-digit margin, a 10-point margin, 9 points difference, about 10-point difference. Darren beats Morgan. Mike B beats Aaron. This was the closest. This was the highest scoring game. I'm sorry, not the closest game. And then Hurt So Good just barely edges out Gary, 129.02, 125.5. And then this was probably the only real big surprise. Is James had a couple of donuts, but still managed to beat Brad, 94.38. Brad is having a rough go with his team for the first 3 weeks. So that was week 2. Again, I've been sick, and so we couldn't have a recap last week, but we're just back at it today. We did have one big trade before week 3 started. Gary and Jeremy made a trade. Turned out to be actually it was an understandable trade. Like auto pick made Jeremy have a bunch of wide receivers, and so he was trying to get stronger with the running backs. And so he targeted Gary, or Gary targeted Jeremy. They both had something that each other wanted. For Gary, he had the chance to have Devontae Adams, so it's getting a star receiver and a guy who's also on your team. It's always nice to have a premier player who's on your team, so you can root for them both in fantasy and in real life. As far as the early results, prior to the trade, they were both kind of down, right? But you're gonna see this week that somebody kind of stepped up a little bit more than the other. Anyways, let's get to the week 3 matchups. Just an overview. The Monday night games had really, really close games between me and Milo and Blitz and Ritz and Whipping Boy and Gary. Those two kind of went down to the wire with that Monday night game. But let's just start with the first one, me and Milo versus Blitz and Ritz. This case, I really thought I was going to lose because a lot of my guys got hurt, like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who was wide receiver 1 the past couple of weeks, hurt his ankle, and so he didn't do as hot. Metcalf finally showed up, so he kind of pulled up. And DeAndre Swift, although he has been dealing with a bum ankle, he also sprained his shoulder in this game, so he was pretty ineffective. And then Dalton Schultz only gave me a donut because he wasn't going to play. Was thinking about trying to find a player for a replacement, but ended up just spreading him out. But still had enough to edge out Richie. Richie had a tough go from David Montgomery. Looks like he got hurt. Alvin Kamara also only 8.8. Fairmouth had 5.1. And in general, you either have like one of the 2 or 3 excellent tight ends and everyone else kind of stinks. Wentz, he was expecting more. He was actually a highly touted fantasy quarterback, but he didn't do so hot. And then he was really relying on the Dallas D. And it just came down to the wire with a Saquon Barkley touchdown that kind of put it out of reach. As far as the bench goes, Dameon Pierce has been a sensational rookie, but he kept him on the bench in this case. Who would you have played? I mean, I think Montgomery had like a big game the prior week, right? Is that how it was? I don't know. Did he get hurt? I don't know. Maybe. Godwin had 0. He actually had a pretty good points on the bench. Edmonds had 15.9. So Richie definitely could have beat me. Just played it wrong. Okay, next up, Prince Llama versus Super Mariota. And looks like Eric's strategy is to load up on quarterbacks. Not only does he have Joe Burrow, but he also picked up Aaron Rodgers. I think earlier did you have Trey Lance? Somebody had Trey Lance and he got hurt. Taysom Hill, who's also a quarterback tight end once again. But anyways, Burrow had a good score, 25.8. Waddle kind of came back down to earth a little bit, but still respectable, 13.2. Deontay Johnson, 12.4. Nick Chubb has been one of the better running backs this year, early on. Miles Sanders only had 6.4, kind of down for him. And Kyle Pitts actually outperformed expectations. Dalvin Cook had a big game, 16.3. The only thing is he got hurt. He had a butt fumble and had to leave the game. Younghae Koo, 13.5. Another strong game by his kicker. New Orleans defense only 4.9. For Brad, the Chargers gave him a negative defensive points. That really hurts. And he's been trying to find stronger players. Duvernay was kind of a smart play considering he's a returner, but he got him 80 return yards, and I think that's equivalent to like 4 points. Adds up. Najee Harris at least kind of played to expectations, but he was a guy you're expecting to take a next step, but didn't do so. It hasn't done so this year so far. Mixon only 6.5, Logan Thomas only 1.5, James Conner 8.5, McPherson, his kicker, 10.5. Should have played the Philly D, 19.6. Would that have got you? Well, not enough to catch Eric, but definitely what should have played over the Chargers. So Brad is going to try to get his team together, rally. He is down 0-3. Okay, next up. Zeke shall inherit the earth, lost to Brownsville Jets. It looks like Mike has a really strong team, carried by Lamar Jackson, who's just like killing it with the points, 43.32. And Herbert. oh, maybe this is what I was thinking of when I was thinking of Montgomery. Herbert had 31.9 points, 157 rush yards. That's incredible. And that's enough to like ride out Robinson, who only had 3.3. Eckler, who is another one who has been slightly disappointing this year. Deebo Samuel only 10.9. Cleveland D 10.6. And then for Darren, Derek Carr, a respectable 23.62 for a quarterback, just nowhere near what Lamar Jackson is. Cooper Kupp kind of disappoints slightly, 14.5. Juju 11.4. Ezekiel Elliott actually did a little bit better for a running back for what I expected of him, 15.5. Raheem Mostert 4.06. Ish Smith 4.2. Is it Ish Smith? Is that what his name is? Irv Smith. Sorry. Cam Akers 12.3. Amari Cooper had 19.6 on the bench. That may have helped a little bit, but not enough to catch Mike. Oh, Mike had Hollywood Brown had 21 points too. So that's another guy who's has a lot of potential for him. Yeah, so it's early on. Looks like Mike B has one of the strongest teams um, so far. All right, next up, Morgan and Jeremy. Morgan had 115. Jeremy had the high score for the week, 144.68. Tough break for Morgan. Morgan could have probably beat some other teams this week, but he got matched up against Jeremy, who with Cordero Patterson scoring 23.5, and then Derrick Henry. So the early returns is of that trade. Looks like Jeremy is on top, getting 24.8 at the right time with Derrick Henry. Singletary getting 20.5, and a strong Cincy 17.3. Josh Allen has been a strong quarterback, 32.7, even though they lost to Miami. AJ Brown has been a pretty decent wide receiver, 17. Drake London, 12.9. The rookie receivers this year have been pretty good, actually. Maybe even not necessarily points-wise, but in terms of what they've been able to do, you can see that they're going to be future stars. Jonathan Taylor kind of underperforming for a number 1 overall pick, 12.7. Gibson, 11.7. Zach Ertz, 7.5. Sutton, 13.7. Judy only had 2.7, so he played the right Denver receiver this week. Adam Thielen had a big game. In that game, I think they ended up shutting down Justin Jefferson, so Thielen had all the catches. DJ Chark, 6.1. And here's another rookie, 9 points, Garrett Wilson. And Williams, 0.8. Okay, so next up is Hurts So Good versus James. Did James fix his team? Yes, he fixed his team this week. Maybe don't fix your team, James. That way you can win. Just kidding. Mike is the only undefeated player so far. He had 108. Again, a matter of matchups. He played the right guy this week. Hurts has been a really strong quarterback, 30.7. Mike Williams kind of disappointing at 8. Bateman a little bit disappointing at 5.9. James Robinson has been I don't want to say he's been a surprise, because he kind of did fall under the radar for me this year, but when he came out, I was like, oh yeah, he is good. And then Jacksonville has been good, which is kind of wild, as they're undefeated. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Leonard Fournette only at 10.7. Travis Kelce, strong tight end performance, 16. One of 3 good tight end performances this week. I shouldn't say 1 of 3, but 1 of 3 that you expect. You expect Kelce, Mark Andrews, and maybe Pitts. But even Pitts wasn't that good early on. Everybody else is kind of like hit or miss. Correct me if I'm wrong as far as anybody else who's a good tight end. There's been rookies has been actually surprisingly good. Like, I don't know how much points he had yesterday, but Bellinger, the rookie from New York Jets, was a reliable target. Jelani Watson, and Jelani, not Watson, Jelani whatever, the Chiefs one, he had 2 touchdowns. Those were his 2 catches for the Colts. So big surprises from those rookies, but again, that's boom or bust. Bad performance from the Mini D, 2.9. Sorry, Mike. Alicia Wan. San Francisco D, 9.6. And then on the bench, several donuts on for Mike, so he played this right. Garoppolo had 12.34, and Harris had 12.7. So there you go. Looks like Mitchell went on IR. Hopkins is suspended. Robinson has a non-football injury, but he's riding him up. So Mike L takes that win against James. And then the last game, this was another one that went down to the wire. Gary versus Aaron. And in this case, speaking of the trade, he did play Adams, and Adams got him 11.8, which is pretty pedestrian for a guy like Adams. And I don't know. You were hoping for some chemistry between him and his college quarterback, Carr. But they have time to turn it around. Whatever happens at the beginning of the season for your players is never the same towards the end. It always evolves throughout the season. Just for Gary's sake, he hopes that Adams can turn it around, because I think the Raiders are 0-3 too, yeah. So it's kind of junk for your real team too. Gabe Davis only had 5.2. Aaron Jones only had 6.4. Oh man, you played both Green Bay running backs. 6 points for Dylan. See, here's the other outstanding performance by a tight end. Mark Andrews, 24.9. Moore only had 2.2. Robbie Gould only had 6.6. Tampa only 6.8. Buffalo surprisingly only had 4.4. But are we surprised? Because Miami is a potent offense. Excuse me. Pat Mahomes, 20.48. Justin Jefferson got shut down, 2.9. And Mike Thomas only had 7.4. Saquon Barkley, I think, won the game for Aaron by scoring that touchdown on Monday night. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 13.1. Dallas Goedert, a respectable 10.10 for a tight end. T. Higgins, 11.8. Bass, only 5.5. As far as your bench, Jamal Williams, man, he really picked it up because he became the future back once DeAndre Swift got hurt. 25.7. Ramondre Stevenson had 19.3 for Gary, so he would have been better off playing him instead of one of these Green Bay running backs. Would that have got you the win? Probably. At the same time, if Aaron played Jamal Williams, he would have guaranteed his win too, but that's just the way it plays out. So there's your week 3 recap. As far as the scoring goes, it seems like everything settled down. I think everyone's happy with the quarterback scores. It kind of looks back to normal. There's nothing I can really do with the tight ends because I can't make them play any better than they already are. We always had options, but I really don't like them of like flexing it with a wide receiver. But I mean, there's only so many good wide receivers too. But so far, if you look at the standings, let's get to last week's recap. League overview. Mike is on top, undefeated. Oh, that's the other thing. I think the waivers has been fixed, and unfortunately, Brad, you don't get the crazy overpowered waivers that we had last year, where you could just pick as many as you want. Nope. Once you get one player, you cycle to the bottom of the waiver wire, and then that goes Morgan, then James, then Darren, so on and so forth. Every time you take one pick, you move to the back of the line. It's a little bit more fair. In general, it just does make it harder to turn your team around. Last year, you could go from worst to first really, really quickly based on how the waivers were. This year, like I said, Mike is in first place. Me and Eric also have not lost by virtue of a draw that we had. So we have not lost. 2-0-1. Jeremy and Aaron and Mike B are 2-1. Mike B looks like he has a really, really strong team. Gary 1-2, Richie 1-2, Darren 1-2, James 1-2, and then Brad and Morgan are 0-3. But we expect some wins eventually. You know, there's been injuries, so that's gonna affect some players and some teams already. And yeah. Anyways, that's the recap for the week. So we look forward to the next coming week. The matchups next week are me versus Brad, Eric versus Mike L, Darren versus Gary, Richie versus Jeremy, Mike B versus Morgan, and then James versus Aaron. So looking forward to this week. All right, so that's it. See you later.